This is a quick screencast to accompany teaching week 10, which is week 2 of the course. This week you're going to set up your own Debian system, which we're going to use as a basis for the rest of the semester. And we're going to do it end-to-end, download an installation image and then get a virtual machine up and running. I've got some slides that I'm going to go through, and if you look on ShuSpace there's a set of workshop notes that we're going to work through. So if you open the document, the lab document here, the first thing you have to do is to download an installation image. So here I've gone to debian.org/distrib and I'm going to grab the small installation image. We do this rather than grabbing a big installation image because it means that most of the install will be done by downloading packages from the internet, which means we're sure we get the freshest versions of all those packages. I'm going to grab the 64-bit netinst ISO, so that's this one here. Right click on it, save link as somewhere. Yep. Okay, and I'm going to download it to my desktop. You'll probably need to download this to your D drive on your local computers. You might need to clear it down if other people have been using the machines before you. That data drive tends to get a bit full over the week, so you might want to start your sessions by clearing it down. Okay, so the ISO is just downloading. Excuse me. We'll start VMware. Okay, you'll do that by clicking on the Start menu, and either VMware will be there or you just search for it. Obviously, I'm using Ubuntu here because it's easier to create the screencast. Just wait a second while VMware starts up. So I have an existing VM that I'm not going to use. We'll create a new one. So this is the window you get. You're going to create a new virtual machine, and typical, use an ISO image, and you're going to, in fact I'll just browse to my desktop. Okay, so that's where you select the file you just downloaded. So what we're saying here is, rather than putting a physical CD in, we're going to use the image we've downloaded. It's behaving like a virtual CD essentially. And it's auto-detected that it's Linux and a Debian 64-bit. Okay, so I'm going to call this web-arch. And where I have my location here, you need to use //acesvmstore/users/your student ID, and that'll make sure it gets in the space that we've put aside specifically for this course. Don't try and save it on your ordinary shared drive. There won't be enough space because we're going to use about 20 gig of disk. Okay, so name and a location, which for you should be under ACSVMstore. Next. Okay, we can leave those. So maximum disk size 20 gig. You can either store that 20 gig as a single file or as a set of multiple files. Multiple files will be slower, but they have the advantage that you can copy them onto things like USB thumb drives. You shouldn't need to do that, so store it as a single disk file unless for some reason you feel you're going to want to copy it onto a USB memory stick. Okay, so 20 gig single disk file. Next. Okay, and this gives us a summary of what's going to be installed. We're just going to click on Customize Hardware and up the memory to 2 gig. That's what we need. Okay, so that's our virtual machine definition complete. When I click the Finish button, it's going to be as though we've just switched on this new virtual computer. So I'll click that now, and you'll see this is essentially the black screen you get as the machine powers on. Okay, it's running through its power on self-test, and this is what would happen essentially if it's booted off a CD, except it's booted from this virtual image instead. You'll see I clicked in the window. Once VMware captures the mouse, which is what happens when you click in the window, it won't release it, and you can't use the mouse for anything else. And any key pressors go to that virtual machine rather than to the host machine. In order to break out of this, you need to press Ctrl and Alt together, and you'll see the mouse cursor comes back, and then I can click outside of the window. So I'll click inside, and I can enter the commands that will be sent to that. So I'm going to select install there. Okay, and it's going to start running through the installation process. I select English, United Kingdom, British English. Okay, and it's starting the base install now. Okay, it's asking me for a host name. This is the name that the machine will be known as on the network. It's actually the name that the machine thinks of itself as. So probably best if you use your student ID here. I'm going to use my university login. SII, there we go. Continue. We can leave domain name as local domain. That's fine. Okay. Root password. We're going to disable the root account, and you do that by just entering a blank password. So if you press tab there and continue, and then tab continue, that will disable the root account. What we are going to do is to set up a student user. So the user we're going to set up is called student. Okay, that's the human readable name, if you like, and the actual account name is going to be student as well. Okay, and now we enter a password. So I'm going to enter the word password. You feel free to choose your own password, but I suggest you set it to password as well, and then we won't have any problems with people forgetting. Ask you to verify password. Okay. So that's a user account set up. The installation is just configuring itself. It's now asking me to partition the disk. I'm going to just accept the default. So guided, use entire disk, and this is presenting me with the disks that I can install on. So we're going to accept that disk, that's our virtual disk, and accept the default, all files in one partition. Okay, and then once we're done we can say finished and write changes, and it'll ask me to confirm yes. Okay, so the Debian installer is now formatting a file system and copying the base system onto it. This should whiz through pretty quickly once it gets going. Okay, so we're now going to tell the installer where it can download packages from. So we'll say we're in the United Kingdom. It'll offer us a list of mirrors. I suggest when you do the install in class you all just randomly pick from this list. Obviously if you hit any one mirror it'll become loaded. Your best bet is probably anything that ends .ac.uk. So here we've got a mirror at Oxford University, and here's Manchester. So I'm going to use Manchester as my mirror. Okay, we can just accept the default for the proxy server, we don't need one. And the installer then goes away and fetches the package lists from that mirror. Okay, this is asking us if we want to participate in the popularity contest. No, we don't. Okay, this is the point where we can choose how we want the system to be set up. Ordinarily, we might just go for a default graphical desktop and then manually install the web server and the SQL database later on. In order to save ourselves some time in class, we're going to just ask the installer to do it. So if you ask for web server, so you cursor down and then press spacebar to select here. So we also want an SQL database and an SSH server. That's going to allow us to talk to the server remotely. Okay, once you've selected those, so that's graphical desktop environment, web server, SQL database, SSH server, and standard systems utilities, and then click on continue. Okay, the installer is going to work out now what packages it needs, and it's going to start downloading them. Since you probably don't want to sit here and watch that for the next 15, oh, well, it says 4 minutes. I'm going to pause the screen recording now, and I'll unpause it before I make any more changes. So back shortly. Okay, come back. There's been a brief pause whilst the Debian installer has downloaded all the packages and installed them, and there have been no intervening dialogues. This is the next screen that you'll see, and it asks you if you want to install the grub bootloader, to which we'll say yes. Okay, our installation is complete and we can click on continue. And at this point, if this were a real computer, a real piece of hardware, it would restart. And this is the effect of what happens after we restart now. The machine started up and it's presented us with this grub bootloader screen. And we're just going to select the top one, which is the Debian install image. Okay, so this is now starting up after a reboot, and we've actually got an installed Debian system. So this is Debian booting up. Okay, and there we go. That's our login screen. So from the notes, the lab notes, what we say is there are a couple of things you should do as soon as it's installed. So one is obviously to log in as our student user. The password was password, assuming that's what you set your password to. So we log in, and the few things that will help us over the coming weeks. If you click on the applications menu and scroll down to accessories, then go down to terminal, instead of left clicking on that, if you right click and add launcher to panel, you'll see the terminal appears in this window up here. And similarly, in there we want gedit text editor, add to panel, so that's there as well. That'll serve as well in the coming weeks. It's important after you've installed a new Debian system that you make sure that it's fully patched, so that you don't have any vulnerabilities in terms of your network services, and we'll do that by starting a terminal. As I explain in the notes here, we have to do some administrative tasks, but because we didn't set a password for the root user, the root user is essentially disabled. The one power that our student user has, though, is the ability to use this command called sudo, which will execute a command as though it were run by an administrator. So ls is the Linux command to list files, and I can say sudo ls, and it will execute this command as though it were root, so asking us to confirm student password. This is to prevent anybody walking up to your keyboard if you've left a machine unattended and start executing administrative commands. So password. Okay, so yeah, should be the same, and it is. So sudo is a pretty useful command, and there's another command called su, which allows us to switch user. So I could say, for example, switch user. The minus tells the switch user command that I want a full environment to root. So this essentially lets me become administrator. And when I run this, it prompts me for the password of the account I'm trying to become. Obviously, we didn't set a password for root, so that's not going to work. Okay, it's actually not possible on this machine to su to root in a traditional sense, which is a good thing, because it means this machine can't be attacked from outside using the known root account. but it does give us a problem because we still need to administer the command. The system. So what we can do is we can use a combination of this sudo command, which says please execute this command as an administrator, and the su command, because as it happens, when the root user uses su, it doesn't prompt for a password, because the administrator can become any user on the system without authentication. So what we can do is we can do sudo space su space minus space root. And what this is saying is, as the administrative user, please switch user to the root user, and the minus, as I said, means get a full environment for that user, so all root scripts will be executed essentially. When I run this, because I ran a sudo command up here, it's remembered that I typed the password in. If I hadn't run this, I'd have been prompted for the student password as I was here, but all is good. So we can see that the command prompt has changed. Where it used to be student at ACESII, so that's the user we were logged in as and the host we're logged into, we now have root at ACESII, so this is showing us that we've changed user. We were the student user, and now we're the root user. There's a command called pwd, which says print working directory, and that tells us that we're in the directory /root now. If I do Control D, that will log me out. You can see that I'm back in the student user here. If I do pwd there, you can see that my directory is /home/student. So all these are signs that we're in a very different environment when we've executed the su command. So I'll get back to root. Oh, it's prompted me for my password now. Okay, so we're root, and there are two really important things we need to do to the Debian system after we've updated it. apt is the package management tool that we're going to use here, and it's got a few commands. apt-get is the command we're going to use. That has some subcommands. I'm going to say apt-get update. And what this is going to do is to visit all the mirrors on the internet and make sure that our package listings are in sync with the ones that are out there on the internet. Make sure we've got lists of all the latest packages. After we've done that, we can say apt-get dist-upgrade, and this tells the system to make sure that all its packages are in sync with those from the internet, so it'll download and install any packages which have been updated since we last run this command. As I think I say in the notes, on a production system you probably have this automated and you'd have a schedule for doing it. For our users, it's a good idea to make sure that you keep everything up to date. Right, so we're all up to date, and that's good. That's really, if you've got to this point in the session, then you've done a lot of good work, and you could probably leave it there. If you are interested in pushing on, though, there are a couple of things in the sort of lab++ part, and what they specifically do was ask you to install the Chrome web browser. So here we can use apt-get again, and we can say apt-get install chromium-browser. Okay, and that's going to download and install the Chrome browser. So we say yes, we want to do that. You can see it working, downloading all the packages. Okay, and once that's completed, you'll see Applications Internet Chromium web browser has appeared. I'm going to right click and add that to my launcher as well, and I'm going to launch it. So this is all stuff from the lab++ session. Okay. I'm going to type in there what we were doing in the first lecture. http://localhost. Okay, and we've got this it works page. Okay, so that's good. That's come from the machine we've just installed, which has got a working web server, and we've got this default page. By default, Debian installs its web pages under /var/www. Because we're still logged in as root, and root's the only user that has permission to change these files, I can cd to /var/www and do an ls, and there I can see this file called index.html. Cat is a command that will just dump the contents of a file to the console, so I can cat index.html, and you'll see here's the HTML, in fact. So I can use a tool called gedit, gedit./index.html. Okay, and that will give me an editing window. Again, this has been run as root. Okay, so you can tell from this prompt that we're still using the root account here, and I can just change some of this. Click on save, back to my browser. Okay, so that's basically letting us change the page. So you might like to have a play with some of this. You could create some subdirectories, or create some pages and link between them. Just play with it until you get comfortable. As I've said as well in the notes, go through the tutorial that I've pointed you out, the Linux tutorial, at least the first 7 chapters of that, because it just talks you through the ls command and cd and making directories. Just make sure that you're comfortable with it. It's prerequisite stuff for this module, so you should be comfortable with it, and give me a shout if it doesn't work. Yeah, okay, I will see you next week. Cheers.